How a simple waitress's urgent note saved a CEO's life in an unexpected twist of fate. In the hum of the diner, with the sizzle of bacon and the familiar sound of coffee being poured, Sarah stood at the counter, her mind racing. She watched people come and go, each with their own story, but as a waitress, she often felt invisible, merely a part of the backdrop. Today, though, the door's jingle felt like a bell tolling. In strode a man who seemed swallowed by his tailored suit. A CEO, she realized, from the way he held himself but kept his head down, burdened by invisible weights. Michael. Her heart sank at the sight. The world of corporate America seemed alien to her. It was filled with ambition and expectation, just like her dreams for a better life for her mom, if only her shifts could yield more than just tips. The struggle to pay bills was suffocating. Each second felt like a tightrope walk between her responsibilities and her unfulfilled aspirations. She took a deep breath, forcing a smile for Michael, and asked for his order. His eyes, glazed with exhaustion, briefly met hers, and she felt a flicker of empathy. Then, impulsively, she folded a note beneath the check, a small gesture from her heart, filled with words of encouragement. "Find balance. Family matters," it read. She didn't expect it would change anything for him, and yet an ache formed in her chest, a moral dilemma. What right did she have to insert her thoughts into his life? Could she, should she, ask him to reorganize priorities that, based on her life, seemed so clear? The moment the check was placed in front of him, she regretted the note almost instantly, fear tightening around her throat. Weeks passed, and each day brought the same grind, the diner's chatter echoing her internal monologue. She worried over her mother, battling illness in the back of her mind while serving customers with weary smiles. There was no relief, no escape from the thoughts shackling her. A festering concern that her mother's health could spiral while her dreams felt impossible to grasp. Anxiety filled her gut. It was as if she was standing on the precipice, teetering over what could be a new life, but finding it just out of reach. Before we continue, I need to tell you about something important that's happening. YouTube has been making changes to the system, and many people are losing notifications from channels they follow. If you're enjoying the content, click the bell and mark all notifications so you don't miss the next videos. And if you can leave a like, it really helps with reach. Seriously, it makes a difference. Oh, tell me in the comments where you're watching from. I'm always curious to know who's on the other side of the screen. Now, let's continue. Michael's life unraveled after that note. A health scare forced him to confront demons he'd buried under board meetings and corporate lunches. As he sat in silence in a hospital room, the crumpled note fell from his pocket, its message striking him like a beacon in the darkness. Family over everything, the thought echoed. But as he tried to make sense of his spiraling world, fear gripped him tighter than ever. What would happen if he upped and left it all? His company, his legacy? He longed to turn that corporate ship around, but the toll of doing so weighed heavy on his soul. On her side of the counter, Sarah juggled fleeting moments of inspiration and relentless anxiety. The diner held small glimmers through the grease, an idea she could pivot her survival, perhaps even reach for more. But every realization led back to the crushing reality of bills and medical appointments. A storm was brewing, and both Michael and Sarah were caught in its unrelenting grip, creating an invisible current tethering them together, a thread that neither of them fully comprehended yet. Decisions loomed on the horizon, and how they navigated through their struggles could either unite them or threaten to pull them apart completely. The pressure coiled tighter around them, leaving Sarah torn between the swirling ambitions she craved and the heavy burdens of loyalty. Would she risk everything to follow the possibilities just beyond her reach? As she continued weaving through her life at the diner, the stakes crescendoed, shrouding their intertwined fates in uncertainty. With every passing day, Sarah's burdens grew heavier as she balanced her responsibilities at the diner with the unsettling worry for her mother. The endless cycle of late-night shifts often left her exhausted, Yet a flicker of ambition still existed within her, buried beneath the layers of fatigue and anxiety. It was an unspoken dream, one that she hesitated to acknowledge fully, fearing it might vanish like smoke if she dared to grab hold of it. The arrival of Michael's crumpled note shifted her focus momentarily. His experience weighed heavily on her thoughts. It felt like he had been struck by a lightning bolt from her unassuming message. That very realization stirred something deep within her, opening an exploratory corridor of possibility. If a few simple words could humble a high-powered CEO, what could they do for her? As she wiped down tables, she mused about her own potential. Maybe it was time for her to find that voice she had tucked away for so long. During breaks, Sarah carefully drafted a plan. She envisioned using her skills in ways that could elevate her life beyond the diner's confines. Her keen observation of customers had taught her the nuances of communication, and her ability to empathize could be an invaluable asset outside the diner's walls. What if she applied for a scholarship or started studying marketing? She could fuse her insights with theoretical knowledge and transform her narrative. While her excitement built, a gnawing fear threatened to derail her ambitions. What if she failed? Could she really leave the only life she had known for a nebulous future? Insecurity wrapped around her heart, whispering that she wasn't enough. Perhaps her dreams were merely fabrications of a mind longing for an escape. Still, the thought of remaining stagnant in the diner, trapped in a cycle of mediocrity, felt unbearable. One afternoon, Sarah overheard a conversation among two regular customers discussing an entrepreneurial workshop aimed at helping individuals from a variety of backgrounds create their own small businesses. Intrigued, she listened closely, her pulse quickening at the prospect of learning to harness her passions into a viable venture. Could this be her ticket to reclaiming control over her life? The workshop was an investment, not just in money, but in her very essence, an exhilarating yet terrifying leap into the unknown. Sarah weighed the costs and benefits during her breaks, letting possibilities spark in her mind. Yet applying required commitment and the courage to confront her deepest fears of inadequacy. As she traced her steps to the back of the diner, she spotted Michael again, this time looking less haggard and more focused. He was engaged in conversation on his phone, but abruptly paused, glancing her way. Their eyes met, and for just an instant, an understanding passed between them. Their lives had become inexplicably intertwined through that one moment, and she sensed he was mirroring her battle for clarity amid chaos. Would the courage she wished to embody inspire her to act? Could Sarah alleviate the restlessness within her by pursuing her ambitions despite the risks? Uncertainty swirled, creating an emotional storm she could no longer ignore. The thought of breaking free from the chains of expectation beckoned her forward, a siren call edged with both fear and hope. Just as Sarah felt the first embers of determination building from within, an unexpected person entered the diner. Michael's assistant, exuding an air of purpose. She spotted Sarah at the counter, her stride carrying a clip of urgency. Without warning, she approached with a confident demeanor. "Sarah, can we talk?" she said, catching Sarah off guard. "Michael wants to meet with you." As the words hung in the air, Sarah's heart raced. What could this meeting entail? Was it an opportunity to redefine not only her life, but also to connect with the very man whose journey sparked her own? In the whirlwind of uncertainty, the looming confrontation with Michael could either ignite her aspirations or send them spiraling into irrelevance. The moment felt surreal as Sarah absorbed the assistant's words. A part of her wanted to blink and wake from this waking dream. What could Michael want with her? The fact that he even considered her worth a meeting was already a leap beyond her expectations. It was as if the veil of her self-doubt had been pulled back, revealing a path enshrouded in possibility. Yes, of course," Sarah stammered, her voice trembling slightly. She glanced around the diner, the familiar walls suddenly feeling like a cage, and yet also a launch pad. Maybe this was the shakeup she needed. Michael wasn't just a customer. He was a man searching for clarity amid chaos, much like her. With a firm nod, Sarah followed the assistant to the back office. Each step felt heavier and lighter at the same time, a cocktail of anticipation and anxiety swirling within her. The space was modest but polished, a sharp contrast to the diner's homely chaos. She recalled how she had once envisioned a life filled with such sophistication, where her dreams weren't shackled by circumstance. Michael was seated at the desk, his demeanor relaxed but serious. He motioned for her to take a seat. "Thanks for coming, Sarah," he began, his tone unlike the corporate machinations she had expected. It was sincere, almost vulnerable. "I read your note. It was impactful." The weight of his words hung in the air, a tangible testament to the power of genuine connection. Sarah searched his eyes, looking for a glimpse of the man behind the CEO facade. What had drawn him to the note? What had he seen in her that she hadn't yet acknowledged in herself? "You caught me during a moment of doubt," he continued. "Every day, it becomes harder to discern what's real and what's just noise. Your simple note reminded me of the strength we can glean from unexpected sources." Her heart raced, resonating with the truth he shared. She was a source, perhaps not just for him, but for herself as well. "I feel lost," she admitted, barely above a whisper. "Like I'm destined for something greater, but I can't seem to take the leap." The words fell from her lips, raw and unfiltered. He leaned forward, his eyes narrowing as if you were unearthing her hidden depths. "What would it take for you to leap?" The question was straightforward, yet it pierced through the shelter of her insecurities, challenging her to confront her own potential. The workshop she had overheard echoed through her mind, fueling her disclosures. "There's a workshop I've been considering about starting a small business. I think it could help me explore my ideas." Her voice steadied as she spoke, the rhythm of her heartbeat syncopating with her swelling ambition. Michael nodded thoughtfully. "You have something valuable to offer. If you're serious about this, I can connect you with mentors from my network who can help guide you through the process." "Really?" The word tumbled out, laden with disbelief and hope. Suddenly, the vast chasm of her dreams felt a little less daunting. "Yes, but let me be clear, it won't be easy," he cautioned. "You'll need to push past every fear and self-doubt that has held you captive until now. It's a commitment, and you'll have to own it completely." As he spoke, Sarah felt something unraveling inside her, an invitation to step into the light rather than languish in its shadow. Was this the defining moment she had been waiting for? One that could pave the way for her dreams to come alive? The tension coiled. Within her, the prospect of freedom from doubt was deliciously intoxicating and fearsome in equal measure. "I will," she declared, surprising even herself. "I'll commit to this." Just then, the weight of his gaze shifted. "Good, because the time is now. It's time to build what you've only dreamed about." As he stood to signal the meeting's close, Sarah felt the air thick with anticipation. The world outside was uncertain, but now she had a foundation on which to build her ambitions. What could this connection with Michael yield, not only for herself, but for him as well? Yet as she left the office, a whisper of apprehension crept in. Was she truly ready to embrace the fear of failure that came with ambition? With her resolve hardening, her heart still fluttered, as doubts trickled in like shadows at twilight. Deciding to confront those shadows, she stepped back into the bustling diner. A world of familiar chaos awaited her, but it was no longer an anchor. It was merely a transitional space toward her burgeoning future. Little did she know, amidst her inner turmoil, Michael faced his own demons that would demand confrontation in ways Sarah couldn't begin to imagine. The moment of truth approached for both of them, and the stakes had just raised significantly. Stepping back into the diner felt strangely like entering a time capsule. The smell of coffee, the clattering of plates, the hum of everyday lives playing out, everything remained as she had left it, yet she felt irrevocably altered. The mundane had morphed into a gateway, tantalizing her with the promise of something greater just beyond reach. Sarah's mind buzzed with the conversation she had just had with Michael. For so long, she had hidden behind a facade of normalcy, her ambitions suffocated beneath layers of self-doubt. But now, what was this shift? Could the recognition of her potential be strong enough to fuel her journey? As she moved behind the counter, her pulse quickened not just from the exertion, but from an urgency to dive into her new reality. This was not just a call to action, but a silent rebellion against the status quo that she had deemed suffocating. Might she transform her visionary notions into tangible plans? The idea that she could actually start something of her own ignited a fire within. She caught herself stealing glances at the small notebook she kept at the corner of the counter. Notes for her future business danced in her mind, fragments of dreams jotted down hastily during slow shifts. What if she used this moment to begin compiling those thoughts into a cohesive plan? Ideas rolled around in her head like marbles, spinning and tumbling together. A cafe, perhaps, or a small community art space. There was a chance to weave her passions into a livelihood. "Hey, Sarah, you've got that look again," teased Iris, breaking her reverie. "What are you plotting?" "Just thinking," Sarah replied, a grin breaking through her moment of introspection. "You know, about life after the diner." Iris raised an eyebrow knowingly. "Ain't that a thing everyone wants? You're really going for it?" The question hung between them, a challenge disguised as camaraderie. The supportive nature of their friendship wrapped around Sarah, pushing her toward an answer she was beginning to recognize. "Yes," she stated, her tone firm. "I think I am." As she took a breath to gather her thoughts, Sarah's determination surged. The prospect of pursuing this dream, however daunting, felt profoundly energizing. Yet within that renewed spirit lurked the gnawing sense of what lay ahead, the suffocating weight of failure and the specter of certainty that had kept her stagnant for so long. Was she ready to confront those intense emotions head-on? Shifting her attention back to her coworkers, she decided to discuss her aspirations. They could be her sounding board, a confidant in a world she was barely starting to navigate. "I want to start a business," she blurted, surprising herself. The diner erupted into a chorus of applause, laughter, and disbelief. Sarah felt a rush of warmth and acceptance, bolstering her commitment. But her mind, trained in caution, quickly spiraled into a fresh vortex of worry. What if their enthusiasm turned to doubt? What if they thought she was just a waitress with big dreams but no path laid out? Amid the jovial atmosphere, an unexpected message beeped on her phone. It was Michael. "I've put together some contacts for you. Let's meet soon." A mix of excitement and dread churned within her. This was her next step. That connection could chart the direction she had so fervently sought. But it amplified her anxiety too. Who was she to ask for help from accomplished mentors? Caught in a whirlpool of emotions, Sarah leaned against the counter. Her heart thudded, each beat echoing the magnitude of her decision. There was no going back. She was already on a precipice of her own making. The moment felt electric, and amid the banter, Sarah realized that confronting the unknown was but part of the journey. Was she truly ready for what lay ahead? The tests that would push her to her limits? As she glanced at the diner's bustling patrons, she knew she had to find her voice and carve a space for it. The stakes were rising, and Michael's faith in her demanded a response. Could she succeed in redefining her existence against the backdrop of fear and uncharted potential? Just before the end of her shift, she could sense the shift in tempo. Through her coworkers' laughter and the customers' chatter, a phone call interrupted her thoughts, revealing a voice from her past, a figure holding a key to unveil even more layers to her journey. "Sarah, it's been a while. We need to talk." The urgency in the tone suspended her breath. What revelations lie ahead, and how would they intertwine with her pursuit of growth? The phone vibrated against the counter like an alarm bell, a stark reminder that the echo of the past still reverberated through her life. Sarah's pulse quickened, her mind racing. Who could it be? Anxiety washed over her as she glanced at the name on the screen. It was Rachel, her former mentor, someone she had lost touch with after difficult circumstances forced them apart. "Sarah, is that you? I was hoping you'd pick up." Rachel spoke with an urgency that pierced through Sarah's clouded thoughts. The familiar voice ported echoes of professionalism intertwined with personal warmth and past conflicts within Sarah's consciousness. "What's going on?" Sarah managed to ask, her voice barely above a whisper. "We need to meet. Something important has come up," Rachel urged, her tone laced with a seriousness Sarah had seldom heard. "I've been watching your journey from afar. You're ready for more than what the diner can offer, believe me." Her heart raced, a cocktail of excitement and apprehension bubbling to the surface. Ready for what, exactly? "Let's talk in person. I need you to understand that there's an opportunity, something that could shine a new light on your path. But we should discuss it face to face," Rachel insisted. The mention of opportunity refracted through Sarah's mind like shards of light, splitting her doubts and illuminating her potential. However, the weight of unexpected undercurrents hung in the air. What had Rachel seen that she hadn't, and why had this connection resurfaced now? "Fine, where?" she agreed, her determination trembling beneath layers of uncertainty. Rachel suggested a time and a place, a local cafe where they had shared ideas in the past, a mingling of hope and creativity. As Sarah hung up, she couldn't help but question the potential distractions from her newfound goals. Would this meeting be a blessing or a disruption? When her shift ended and the diner finally quieted, Sarah found herself staring at the small notebook, her dreams laid bare in the form of scrawled notes and half-formed ideas. She had always looked upon it as merely a collection of aspirations, but now it felt critical, a blueprint for the future she yearned to create. The drive to the cafe was filled with reflections on Rachel's words and the burgeoning aspirations that twisted within her like a blooming vine. With each mile, she analyzed her ambitions, considered her desires, and wrestled with the ever-present specter of doubt. Could Rachel offer insight that would empower her to transition from dreams to tangible reality? Arriving early, Sarah picked a corner table that granted her a view but also shielded her from the bustling crowd. She opened her notebook, letting her thoughts pour onto the pages as though they held the keys to her destiny. She penned ideas and strategies, vulnerable yet powerful, leaving room for fear to mingle with determination. As she immersed herself in her thoughts, a familiar rush of excitement swept through her. This was action, this was planning, this was growth. Then Rachel entered, her confident demeanor radiating authority mingled with nostalgia. The simple act of meeting someone who had once believed in her sent a warm shiver coursing through Sarah. They exchanged pleasantries, both aware of the gravity of this reunion. "This doesn't just concern you," Rachel said after they settled in. "It involves a project that can amplify your voice in ways you wouldn't imagine. That potential you've held inside, it's time to channel it." Rachel's words ignited sparks of possibility. Sarah's mind began to whirl. What was this project? What would she have to sacrifice to participate? Her earlier fears clawed at her consciousness, threatening to dismantle the newfound courage she had summoned. "Sarah, I see the fire in you. Don't you want to forge a path that's uniquely yours?" Rachel's gaze locked onto hers, firm yet compassionate. The urgency of the moment crystallized everything that lay before Sarah. The stakes had escalated. This was her chance to step out of the shadows of self-doubt. But would she step forward or shrink back, consumed by what-ifs? Yet before she could respond, Rachel leaned forward, the conversation shifting. "There's something I haven't told you, something pivotal to your potential. As Rachel divulged the intricate details that would entwine their lives once more, Sarah felt the weight of her fear dissolve just a little. New revelations brought an exhilarating tension. What would she uncover about herself, about her past choices? How would this possibly change her trajectory? In that moment, Sarah realized that stepping into the unknown was no longer a matter of choice. It was a necessity. Would she embrace this unexpected opportunity, knowing that it could unravel everything she thought she knew about herself? The looming question echoed in her mind. Was she finally ready to face what waited on the edge of her comfort zone? Rachel leaned in closer, her voice a conspiratorial whisper that seemed to wrap around Sarah like a protective cloak. The project I'm talking about is more than just a chance to be heard. It's an initiative focused on social impact, potentially bringing communities together through art and storytelling. And I want you to lead it. The weight of Rachel's words settled heavily in the air between them. For an instant, Sarah's imagination leaped ahead, unfurling vibrant workshops brimming with creativity and collaboration. But then, the floodgate of doubts burst open, submerging those bright dreams under waves of fear. "Lead?" she stammered, unable to mask the tremor in her voice. "You must mean someone else. I'm just a waitress who scribbles in a notebook. I don't have the experience for something like that." Rachel held her gaze steady. "Exactly. You're not just a waitress, Sarah. You have insights and raw talent that can inspire others. You've been living the struggles that resonate with so many. This project could be the perfect way to channel your experiences into something meaningful." The idea was both intoxicating and terrifying. Sarah had long carried the belief that her dreams were unreachable, spinning them into intricate webs that caught her in cycles of self-doubt. Now faced with this possibility, a tiny flicker of defiance ignited within her. Could she actually be capable of leading something significant? "Think about it," Rachel continued, sensing the shift in Sarah's demeanor. "What if this is an avenue to break free from the constraints you felt? You can curate voices and stories that deserve to be seen and heard. You owe it to yourself to consider it." Just as resolve began to bubble up, Sarah's practical side interjected. How could she juggle the demands of an unfamiliar project alongside her current job? The diner felt like both a safe haven and an anchor holding her back. "I can't quit the diner. I have bills to pay, responsibilities." Rachel's expression softened. "I know, change is scary, but the transition would be gradual. You don't have to abandon everything overnight. What if we started with a weekend workshop? Just a day to see what it could look like." The glimmer of hope she felt collided with the icy grasp of her fears. What if she stumbled? What if she wasn't enough? "Sarah, there will always be doubts. That's part of the process," Rachel said gently, as if she could read the tumult in Sarah's heart. "It's brave to face the unknown. You have this opportunity in front of you, an opportunity to grow beyond the diner, beyond yourself." Discussion swirled between them, each word strumming at Sarah's heartstrings, until she could almost hear the quiet song of her aspirations rising, urging her to take a step forward. They crafted plans as Rachel painted vivid pictures of the project. Sarah listened intently, each idea solidifying her growing resolve. And yet, amidst the excitement, uncertainty still clawed at her confidence. She felt exposed, raw in the light of this new direction, confronting her fear of failure head-on. Would this really lead her to the path she had always desired? As the conversation began to wind down, Rachel's voice dropped to a serious murmur. "I believe in you, Sarah. Embrace your potential. You could change lives, starting with your own." The barista interrupted their exchange, placing 2 steaming mugs before them. The bitter aroma of coffee filled the air, sinking deeper into their conversation and grounding Sarah in the moment. She took a sip, attention pulled back to Rachel's unwavering expectation. It was time to make a choice. Take a leap into the unknown or remain shackled to her past. The next few months loomed large in her mind, stretching into an expanse of hope and fear. Rachel smiled, waiting patiently, as though she could see the gears shifting inside Sarah's mind. The thrill of possibility and the weight of pressure danced at the edges of her consciousness, demanding a response. "Give me 1 weekend," Rachel proposed softly. "Just 1 weekend to discover if this is what you've been searching for." Sarah inhaled deeply, her heart racing as she pondered the decision that would define her journey. But as she opened her mouth to respond, unspoken words hung suspended in the air. She felt on the precipice of a transformation, poised between doubt and determination. How would she decide? As fear and courage met within her, a new uncertainty loomed. What would it truly cost her to strive for something greater? The answer felt just out of reach, pulsing with potential. In that moment, Sarah understood that she could no longer remain a passive observer in her own life. The thread of action pulled her closer to a choice, and the ripples of that choice would soon alter the course of everything. Determined, she took a deep breath, readying herself to step into the unknown. "Okay, Rachel, let's do it," she whispered, sealing her commitment to the leap ahead. But as she uttered those words, the weight of her decision settled heavily around her. What awaited her on this path of ambition? The curtain of her past loomed behind her, and ahead was a future wrapped in uncertainty. Was she truly ready to unravel all she thought she understood? The decision felt monumental. As Rachel's smile widened, Sarah's heart raced with a mix of excitement and dread. She left the cafe and stepped into the world outside, the chill of the evening air hitting her like a splash of cold water. This was the moment her life could pivot in a new direction, yet the weight of her existing commitments wrapped around her like an anchor, pulling her back toward the familiar. Over the next few days, Sarah wrestled with her decision. It became a mental tug-of-war. Her dreams clashed with the well-worn path she squeezed herself into. She dove headfirst into jotting down ideas that fluttered through her mind, scribbling notes in the margins of her receipts during quiet shifts at the diner. With each word, the project blurred into a picture more vivid than any she'd previously drawn in her notebook. Still, fear lingered like a shadow. In one moment, she would feel the momentum carrying her forward, propelled by the sweetness of possibility. And in the next breath, the suffocating grip of doubt tightened around her chest. What experience did she have? What if she failed? The self-critic that had silenced her for years reared its ugly head, coaxing her to retract her promise. Determined to face those fears, Sarah sought solace in her writing. With each word poured onto the page, amid coffee-laden tables and the buzz of patrons around her, she found clarity. The stories she wanted to explore weren't about grand triumphs or immaculate success. They would illuminate the subtle resilience and candid realities that wove lives together. It was this authenticity that she could bring to the project. Saturday arrived with a mixture of anticipation and dread. She arrived at the community center, where Rachel had organized the first workshop. The room buzzed with an electric energy, filled with individuals whose faces were unfamiliar, yet somehow inviting. The scent of fresh paint mingled with the faint aroma of coffee, creating an environment both creative and chaotic. Then came the moment of truth. As Rachel introduced her, Sarah's palms became clammy. Standing in front of the group, she felt the weight of their gaze upon her, and suddenly all her insecurities threatened to swallow her whole. But then she remembered her notes, her reflections, and the stories she longed to share. "Thank you for being here," Sarah managed to say, her voice trembling slightly, but growing steadier with each breath. "I'm not here to lecture you. I'm here to facilitate a space where we can explore our stories together, stories that matter." She could see their curiosity ignite. With that first spark, Sarah activated something powerful within the group. Ideas blossomed as they engaged in hearty discussions over their own experiences, laughter mixed with moments of vulnerability, memories that wove together the fabric of relatability. The chamber felt lighter. She no longer stood alone at the forefront. Instead, she was the ignition for collective sharing, and it was liberating. By the time the workshop concluded, Sarah was surprised to discover not just the participants had grown from the experience, but she had too. All her doubts hadn't vanished, but they'd shifted. Now they formed a raw platform for her evolving journey. The experience crystallized a deeper awareness. She held the power to narrate her journey while inviting others to tell theirs. Leaving the center that day, Sarah walked with her head a little higher. The world had transformed from merely observing to actively participating. She felt the reins of her life tighten in her grasp, ever so slowly. Yet in the solitude of her thoughts, a new question echoed. What if she didn't just organize workshops, but channeled these narratives into something more substantial? As she mulled over the potential, she could almost envision stepping beyond workshops to broader spaces, perhaps even a collection of stories that highlighted personal journeys. What could she create if she dared to invite even more complexity into her aspirations? Through her own reflection, she began to see the vast landscape ahead, teeming with opportunity. But the thrill of creativity danced dangerously close to a fresh vein of anxiety. With these new ambitions swirling in her mind, Sarah remained poised at the challenging intersection of hope and fear. Little did she know, the real struggle was just beginning. Soon, she would face unexpected opposition that would force her to confront her newly ignited purpose and the fragility of her evolving voice. What would the next chapter reveal about her journey, and who or what would stand in her way? Sarah awoke the next morning, her resolve engulfed by a shroud of unease. She had every intention of diving headfirst into her project, but the weight of her aspirations felt heavier than before. The bright morning light streaming through her window offered no comfort, only stark reminders of unfulfilled dreams. What was she so afraid of? Was it success, or the daunting prospect of failure that froze her in indecision? Determined to galvanize her thoughts, she grabbed a notebook, the pages filled with half-formed ideas and hopes. But today, none of it seemed good enough. She circled words, scribbled over sentences, her pen flying furiously around the paper, only to induce frustration. Each crossing out felt like another step backward. She needed a breakthrough. She needed clarity. She forced herself out of the apartment, seeking inspiration. Her mind whirred as she stepped into the bustling streets. People hurried past, each caught in their own narratives, something she had always noticed but now sought to leverage. That was her strength, a genuine curiosity in the human experience. Yet, confronting her own story remained infinitely more complex. At the diner, she fell into her usual routine, but the weight of her internal conflict stalked her relentlessly. Each customer that approached the counter bore a tale, yet Sarah felt trapped in an untold one of her own. The clattering of dishes and the hum of chatter seemed to mock her indecision. What kind of stories would she share? Who would even care about them? The self-doubt loomed larger, taunting her with the specter of past failures. During a lull between rushes, she found herself rereading her workshop notes. Discontent brewed as she thought back to the participants' eagerness, their willingness to bear their truths. But deep inside, she questioned if they saw any value in her own. In the midst of this turmoil, a small voice inside encouraged her to confront the skepticism at her own door. Suddenly, the door swung open, and an older man shuffled in, clearly exhausted. He settled into a booth, tousled hair and kind eyes revealing deep stories etched into his features. Taking his order, Sarah couldn't resist. She plucked up the courage and asked, "What brings you here today?" With a soft smile, he replied, "I needed a place to think. Life can throw some unexpected challenges, can't it?" That phrase struck a chord deep within her. "Yes, it can," she replied, her curiosity piqued. As he shared fragments of his life, stories of loss, resilience, and a dream deferred, something shifted inside Sarah. This man, this stranger, was sharing a part of himself with her, and by merely listening, she understood a pivotal truth. Everyone has a story that intertwines in ways she could never fully grasp. As the shift progressed, Sarah began to view her role differently. Instead of simply facilitating, she could weave her own stories alongside those of others. Her perspective started to evolve, transforming a simple workshop into something much greater, a tapestry of shared human experience. With the end of her shift nearing, conviction flickered within her. She needed to stop questioning her right to share, and instead focus on the connections that would emerge. But deep down, a lurking anxiety reminded her that such ambition invited criticism, and she had yet to confront the naysayers. As she stood behind the diner counter, a stack of new ideas forming in her mind, the insecurity of others suffocating her vision. Every ounce of clarity she barely grasped felt threatened, and she needed to steel herself for inevitable disagreements. What she hadn't anticipated loomed like a storm cloud, an upcoming confrontation with those who believed her dreams were foolish. Little did she realize the tipping point was fast approaching. How she faced the incoming resistance would not only define the outcome of her project, but also the courage to own her voice. The moments stretched as Sarah retreated to her thoughts, wondering how she would navigate this uncharted territory. Would she stand resilient against the tide, or be swept away by the winds of doubt? A new challenge awaited, and the time had come to face the storm. The day began with an eerily calm ambiance, masking the tempest brewing within Sarah. As she opened her notebook again, fresh thoughts were battling the lingering shadows of doubt. A half-formed idea about merging her personal experience with the stories of others danced tauntingly at the edges of her consciousness. She could feel a pulse of energy stir inside her, yet it was still tethered to her anxiety over judgment and criticism. Determination surged as she decided to explore this concept beyond mere daydreams. Perhaps the best path forward didn't lie in the vanishing depth of her self-doubt, but in a more tangible confrontation of it. She envisioned hosting a series of workshops where her participants would narrate their stories while she engaged with them, not as merely a facilitator, but as a genuine collaborator. The idea sent a rush through her, igniting an ember of hope. However, as quickly as inspiration struck, reality swept in with its familiar icy grip. What if they dismissed her ideas? What if her blending of narratives fell flat? Stiffening against the onslaught of her own thoughts, she made the decision to test the waters. After her shift wrapped up, she pulled together a group of willing colleagues from the diner for an informal gathering. No pressure, just a chance to talk. As her coworkers trickled in, she felt the weight of apprehension coalesce in her stomach. Each face carried a mix of curiosity and skepticism, a reflection of her own insecurities. "Hey everyone, thanks for coming," she began, struggling to sound casual. "I've been thinking about storytelling, how we all have different experiences that shape who we are. I want to explore ways to share our stories and connect." Murphy, a regular, chuckled. "Are we about to have a therapy session? What's the point? We're all just trying to get through the day." His skepticism stung, but she pressed on, rallying the courage to challenge herself. "Well, that's kind of the point. Isn't there more to our lives than just serving coffee and clearing plates? I think our stories matter." One colleague, Zoe, nodded slowly. "I get that. Sometimes it feels like we're just cogs in the machine. I guess it would be nice to share something beyond the grind. What'd you have in mind?" Emboldened by Zoe's willingness to engage, Sarah elaborated on her vision. It was a simple framework. Each would take turns telling a story, with include comments and questions that would enrich the narrative. Over the next hour, tentative stories began to trickle out, weaving a tapestry of experiences that touched upon aspirations, regrets, and surprising moments of kindness. Each person's contribution felt like a stone in a pathway she hadn't realized she was building. Sarah carefully mapped the intersections and connections in the way they each affected one another. But with every shared moment, the fear of judgment loomed larger. What if she wasn't capable of guiding these threads properly? It was in that moment, amidst the vulnerable exchanges, that Sarah recognized a sudden and unexpected surge of gratitude and strength. She understood that the fear she had fought to suppress could serve a purpose, one that could deepen her approach rather than cripple it. Embracing this duality, being both vulnerable and brave, could be transformative. Her spirit brightened with each resonating story until it clicked. She could elevate her role from mere hostess of workshops to an architect of narratives. But this meant she would need to become comfortable with allowing herself to be seen and heard, to accept the inevitable criticisms that might follow. As she wrapped up the informal meeting, she felt renewed. Not completely unburdened, but determined to embrace the challenge ahead. She now understood that every narrative she and her colleagues shared played a role in shaping a collective growth experience. Yet even as her confidence grew, a nagging thought remained. How would she react when the naysayers didn't simply question her, but sought to shut her down? She stared down at the coffee dregs left in her cup, swirling hints of doubt within. The moment was upon her. The next step would be to present this idea to her boss, an unavoidable confrontation that could either ignite her vision or extinguish it before it began. The stakes felt higher than ever, and as she stepped back into the diner's fray, the weight of her emerging ambition pressed heavily upon her. There was no room for hesitance now. The critical moment of action loomed, and she had no choice but to ready herself for what would come next. Would she embrace her voice, or would she allow fear to dictate her path? Facing her boss felt like standing on the edge of a cliff. Sarah knew that this meeting would define her shifting reality, testing not just her ambitions but her very conviction. She took a deep breath and stepped into the office, a small sanctuary amidst the chaos of the diner. The faint hum of the busy diner faded into silence as she gathered her thoughts. "Sarah, what's on your mind?" her boss, Tom, asked, leaning back casually in his chair. His demeanor usually felt accommodating, but she sensed that today was different. Today, she felt as if her worth was being gauged. I've been thinking about something," she began,
I believe we have an opportunity here, a way to engage our team and the community through storytelling workshops. As the idea unfolded, each sentence felt like a lifeboat navigating the stormy sea of her insecurities. Tom raised an eyebrow, a hint of skepticism flickering across his face. Storytelling? And why should we invest our time in that rather than just focusing on our bottom line? Encouraged by the support of her colleagues in their informal gathering, Sarah pushed through. Because life is more than just numbers. It's about our connections, our experiences. If we share them, we can build a stronger team, enhance customer loyalty, and foster a deeper sense of community. This isn't just for us. It's a way to create a shared narrative that can resonate far beyond these walls. The pause that followed felt interminable as Tom weighed her words against the practicalities he lived by. However, as she held his gaze, she witnessed a flicker of intrigue. "What do you have in mind?" With that question, the floodgates opened. She detailed her vision, sharing potential frameworks for integrating storytelling into their operations, the benefits it could bring, and the unique value it could provide to the diner and the community. The words flowed more freely than she had anticipated, as if every doubt had been eclipsed by burgeoning confidence. In the end, Tom leaned forward, contemplating her proposal. There was still trepidation behind his eyes, but after a moment, he nodded slowly. "All right, let's give it a trial run. I'll support you, but you must commit to this. There's a lot at stake." The elation that flooded through her felt electric, punctuating the air like the first burst of fireworks on the 4th of July. "Thank you!" she exclaimed, not even bothering to conceal her excitement. As she stepped out of the office, reality jolted back, and the din of the diner enveloped her once more. Sarah's heart raced, yet within that pulse was clarity permeating her chaos. She had not only stepped forward to claim her vision, but had ignited a path toward greater responsibility, one that could redefine her role, her ambitions, and the lives of others. With each passing day following that meeting, the reality of her aspirations fell into place. The first workshop was set, and word spread like wildfire. The community buzzed with anticipation. Sarah dove headfirst into planning, supporting her colleagues as they wove their stories into a collective tapestry. On the day of the first workshop, the atmosphere thrummed with energy. As the participants filed into the community center, their eagerness invigorated her. "Welcome, everyone," she began, envisioning more than just sharing stories. This was a transformative experience for everyone involved. Through laughter and heartfelt exchanges, barriers fell away, revealing the common threads binding them together. Each story shared affirmed her own journey, magnifying the significance of witnessing struggles and victories alike. Sarah thrived amid the vulnerability, and in return,
The participants recognized their power in storytelling. By the time the workshop concluded, Sarah found herself at the center of a newfound community, an exhilarating realization. The conversations flowed, connections deepened, and she stood as a catalyst for their experiences. The profound validation washed over her. This was what she had longed for, being seen, being heard, and allowing her voice to resonate. As the weeks progressed into a regular workshop series, Sarah's confidence solidified. She shed layers of self-doubt, discovering her capability to lead, to inspire. The diner, a place once filled with monotonous routines, blossomed into a hub where dreams took shape. To her surprise, it was not just her participants who transformed. Sarah began receiving recognition from her colleagues and even her boss. The ripple effect of her initiative reached far beyond her initial expectations. Tom soon shared with her that the workshops had elevated morale within staff, improved customer interaction, and most importantly, fostered a culture that encouraged storytelling. Sarah was no longer just a waitress hidden within the backdrop. She had become an architect of narratives. The echo of her earlier fears paled in contrast to the reality she faced now. Sarah achieved what she once deemed impossible. She went from merely existing to conquering her self-doubt, gaining the confidence to pursue her ambitions. And so, in this metamorphosis, Sarah stepped into her new role, not just as a driver of workshops or a catalyst for storytelling, but as a person who feared failure, yet had learned to embrace both triumphs and hardships as part of a resounding human experience. There was a serene sense of accomplishment within her, like the calm after an exhilarating storm. Life was no longer a rigid script. It was a dynamic narrative being penned with every interaction, a limitless story waiting to unfold. Now, the future shimmered with promise, and Sarah stood ready, resolute in continuously discovering the power of her voice. Subscribe immediately to the channel to not miss the next exclusive emotional stories. Leave a like now to feed the algorithm. Comment your reactions and theories about the ending. Share instantly this video with at least 5 friends who need to see this conclusion. You need to subscribe now, because this is the moment to show your support. Don't wait even one more second to share.